Okay, so off camera we took a moment or two just to hit it with a hairdryer and dry it out. What you see is that we've got some areas where the wood has soaked in the paint, and so you see some lighter areas, but you don't really see a lot of darker areas. So I'm just going to take a moment now that it's a little bit drier than it was before and just make some highlights on the highlighted on the big areas where you're going to see those. You'll see those on ears, nose, cheeks, and up under shadowed areas. So we'll make his ear a little bit darker, pull in a little bit more of that red oxide. Want to make his cheek a little bit darker. Blend that in. We'll make the mouth, which has a different shade than the rest of the face, and we'll blend that color in. I don't want it real stark sitting out there. Now we've got a good blend of the darker, and I'm going to go just up under the eyelid right there, just to give it a little bit of shadow up under there when we're done. Alright, bear with me a second, and I'll hit that with the dryer, and we'll dry it out. And when I do that with a hairdryer, I don't want to make it completely dry. I still want a little bit of wetness to it, and you can feel that it's still a little bit damp. I don't want it completely dry, because completely dry wood is just going to soak paint in, and that's never what I want to do. Okay, we'll move to the eyeball, and for the eyeball I'm going to use white. This cool white here is a really good white for using that, and I'm just going to dip a little bit in the well. I don't need much, although we're going to paint twice here, this guy and the other guy that we talked about. So we'll need a little bit more white, but we don't need a lot. In fact, that's probably about 10 times more than what I need, but that's okay. I'm going to stick a few drops of water just to help it flow. I'm going to reach over here and I'm going to get a really small brush, because we don't have a great big eye to work with, so we don't need a lot of surface area on a brush. We'll mix that white in, making sure that it flows really well. And then we'll come here and we will get right into that. So what I want to do is get into the paint, roll it so it comes to a real sharp point, and that way I can paint those eyes. Now, I'll be honest with you, painting eyes are hard, because it requires a steady hand and good eyesight. And if you're like me, where you're getting to the point where you're wearing bifocals, sometimes if you do this without good light, you are really asking for paint to be scattered just about anywhere it wants to go. Because again, like I said, this is not completely dry. So if you get too much paint in one area, it's going to flow in an area you don't want it. That one looks okay, but I want to clean up that little area right there, because it's got a little bit too much paint on it. Kind of overflowed the eye, so I'll get it wet and I'll just take it out. And I think on the bottom we're okay. I got a little part right there. Probably isn't going to show up, but it's not a bad idea to see if we can remove it so it doesn't distract. Okay. I want to dry that off just a hair. Stuff across the table when I hit it with a highlighter with the hairdryer. Alright, now what we want to do is take the black, and I want to go pretty much straight out of the top of the bottle. And we're just going to dip that black. We're just going to paint that eyeball. I don't need any water. This is going to serve as the back portion of the eyeball. And here's where I'm really careful, because it's real easy to make these guys look like they're opening their eyes so wide that they're scared to death. And like I said earlier, painting eyeballs is not the easiest thing to do. But you've got a couple choices. You can practice and practice and practice. Or you can convince your sweetie, whoever that may be, to paint them for you. I have a good friend of mine that unfortunately is starting to get Parkinson's disease, and he's getting the bad shakes. So his wife paints the eyeballs for him, and she does a marvelous job of it. Anyway, we've got his eyeball, the black and back part of the eyeball done. Hit that with a hairdryer real quick, just to get it enough dry so we can put more paint on there without it floating. Got that eyeball now looking flat. We're going to use this Hauser medium green because it's a light green color. Looks really good. It shows up enough. A lot of times if you use the black color and then use a dark eye color, it looks really strange, or it doesn't even show up at all. Again, we're going straight in. I'm not worrying about dipping into water. And we're just going to make sure that when we color that eyeball, that we're coloring almost the entire thing. In fact, it's okay if you leave a tiny little ring around the outside. You're just going to leave a little bit of that in the eyeball. And so I know carvers that paint the whole eye black and then paint over it in white, leaving black in the shadows. I like it like this because what you get is that very little bit of the black around the outside. It gives you that outside shadow. We'll use the hairdryer again, bear with me. Got him down to where he's a flat color to the eye. We'll put that eye aside, or that paint aside, and we're going to go back to the black. Now we're going to do the pupil. And again, this is where it's crucial that it be round, or at least as close to round as you can make it. So if you use a stylus, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just going to use my brush. I've heard some people call these doll eyes, but you know what? They work really well in your carving. I look at the doll eyes and I think of the white streaks that they add on the outside of the pupil. That to me is what I see as a doll eye. This looks a little bit better because you've got a round pupil and you've got the green color on the outside. I guess I should know all those terms. What's the iris, what's the pupil, and all that, but you know what I'm talking about when you see it. Going to dry it again. And then the last thing we're going to do on this eye is give it a highlight. Doesn't need much of a highlight. We're just going to go back to that same tiny brush. This is a 5/0 round. Works perfectly for what I want to do. So I want to get a little dip of white. And what you want to do is make sure that white hits the pupil and the iris. And so I'm going to put it right about right there. Just a little highlight. Some people do it as a streak. Some people do an alternate highlight, or a bigger one over here, a lighter one over there, almost like it's got two eye sources or light sources. I like it like this, just one little dot in there. Up close, you can see it. When you pull back away, it looks really, really, really good in terms of color for the eye. Get that up close so you can see that, how that works. And you notice if you look at the rest of the face, repeated drying has caused some of that paint of the face to go back in and soak into the wood, so now it looks lighter. We'll bring that out when we finish it. Let me dry this off real quick. Alright, I think that eye's looking pretty good. Like I said, when we first started painting, it looked like there were some areas that were going to show up real dark. And if we look, we've got highlight here, highlight here, highlight here, highlight there, and highlight there. The rest of the face looks a little bit like the color of the skin minus the pink stuff. Don't like to add a lot of pink to the face. It looks a little goofy to me. But anyway, we'll stop right there and we'll come back and finish it up in the next video.